It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Recording is started. We're podcasting. Welcome, everybody. Today we have Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
Chad Jutner.
Hello.
And back again to join us is Allison Lorenzo.
Hello.
And I talked over you. What's wrong with me?
I was just saying hello, so I don't think anyone will miss out too much.
Well, now they know what you sound like, too, so they don't get you mixed up with Peter or myself.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk. You're doing a presentation coming up at our big event, and so we're going to do a little sneak peek and then talk about it before it happens. And so what's the topic, Alice? Product development, empathy, something.
Yeah, all those buzzwords. No, it's called Tell Me a Story, empathy in product work. So it's about the role and importance in storytelling and empathizing in any product work that you do, if that's any role.
So I've never actually been part of product. I kind of do it as my role as a tech support guy for our company. The product is the service we provide and the systems and everything around IT that we deliver to customers, or our customers, which is you guys and all of our other people. And the empathy is giving Jasmine a new laptop because she told me about the pain and suffering of her old one, and she told me a story. Yeah.
There you go. So you know what I'm talking about then. Yeah. I mean, I think this applies to not just product, like that's kind of what my presentation is focused on, but it's anyone's job, really. The whole point is that humans, since the ancient cave painting days, have been telling stories. It's like the lifeblood of how we communicate to one another and how we make sense of ourselves in the world and make meaning and motivate ourselves, empathize with any other person's experience. And it would be foolish to not think that it makes sense to utilize that very basic skill in the way our brains are wired in our professional lives as well. So a couple of examples that I could give are again, specifically for product, there are all sorts of artifacts like personas and journey maps and user stories and user scenarios, storyboarding, all these different things that maybe you've already heard of that kind of show the usefulness of telling stories while you are working on building something, right? So the power of telling a story about maybe a user using your software, or the story of your product out in the world and the difference it's making. It motivates the people who are working on it, and it clarifies what the heck you're trying to do and trying to achieve, and it kind of gets everyone working on it on the same page. So it's useful to align people, and it's useful to motivate them, and it just engages them in a way more than, just having a backlog of features with no meaning attached.
Well, no problems, right? You're not solving anything with a bunch of features, you're solving a problem with a story that what's going on and what's broken, and I need this tool to help me do this thing, and I don't really care about features. I just need this tool to help me and get it done. And sometimes sharing a little bit about how you're going to solve it or anything like that is a little bit different. I know we talk about user stories, and it sort of seems, I don't know, it feels like it's not a story really anymore. It's more of a recipe. I don't know. Chad, do you think user stories are stories, or have they gone away from that a little bit?
No, I mean, it's still helpful for me, and I'm biased because I got to work with Allison for 4 years or something on a
Mhm.
Wow.
project. So I got to see a lot of what she's talking about in action, and I no, I think there's still, I mean, a user story, especially the way Allison practices it, really, really helps me. I mean, as a tech lead, as a guy that designs the whole thing, it helps me understand not just like what this specific task is, but what it could be, where it's going, what the evolution of that task might look like for or whatever that feature is or whatever we're describing. Um, and so um, with with everything Allison is talking about, it just leads. I mean, for me, it led to a pretty good outcome for our project. It took a while to get there, but it's and then also I think one of the things that Allison isn't touching on now, maybe you will in a second here, is that when you involve like actual users of the system in that story writing process, like
Hmm.
they actually have a lot of buy-in and they actually get, I think, a little more invested in. I mean, not that they don't want your product to be successful, but uh, they've got like, they've got skin in the game. They've got, their input into whatever we're building here, and their preferences, um, and maybe they recognize a little bit of their biases when they're helping us walk through these stories. Um, so yeah.
So
Uh,
is it does it go beyond as a user, I want to blah 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 in blah blah blah, or is it more robust than that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of maybe things that you could think about when you hear user story. It could just be that format of writing your requirements in the form of as a blank, I want to blank so that I can blank.
Yeah,
Which,
boring.
like you said, that's kind of it's a recipe. I still think it's nicer than we need a filter feature.
Right.
Like, why?
Yeah.
For what? For who? In what scenario? So it kind of helps avoid the worst of the worst, but it's not like a super powerful story, as you mentioned. But there are more uh, pronounced, I would say, more developed user stories. These would be maybe what I would call like user scenarios when
Hmm.
it's a couple of paragraphs, maybe a paragraph to 3 paragraphs long, and you're describing a person in a specific scenario and how they're going to use whatever you're building, right? So, one example that I have is again, instead of just in a ticket saying, we need to add the ability to filter, you could
Right.
say, this persona, detailed Debbie, like for one example,
That
is
Debbie.
going on a work trip and she uh, wants to be able to find a hotel based off of her preferences. She wants to be able to sightsee while she's there, so she wants to be in a certain location, and it's really important for her to have Wi-Fi because she's going to be working while she's there. And so she logs into our web app and she uses the filters in this way and she achieves this outcome. So it's telling a little story that is, this is important. It's not just you making it up. It's not just you writing a story for a story's sake. It should be based in reality, from
Right.
what you know about your users and your research. And by doing that, you have a lot more information and a lot more focus. Because if you just say, we need filters, it's like, again, for
Yeah.
who? For what? Like,
You
to
know,
what end?
I already have empathy for Debbie. And
Right?
it's funny, like once you start like paying attention to stories happening, like to Chad's point, involving business users. So when they're part
Mhm.
of the project, they learn the story of the project. And then when you launch it, and they're among other users that maybe have not been part of it, and they
Yeah.
might
Mhm.
have like issues, complaints, whatever. Why is this like that? This is stupid. And then that, person that was part of it can tell the story of why it's like that,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe
Mm-hmm.
help that person out.
For
Um,
sure.
Tech support, when somebody puts a ticket in, it's please tell
My
me a
computer's
story.
broken.
Computer bad. Okay. How is it bad? Why is it bad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the old days of consulting, back in the old days when I was a consultant, I did intranets, and a lot of times it was just me without the stories, without and then you get more experience, you move along, and then UI, UX and stuff, and then persona development, and it was hard for me to kind of grasp the purpose around persona development and how you would actually use that. But if you say it's about the story of the users, and this persona represents this segment of our users, so we create this archetype,
Mm-hmm.
and we use that to tell the story of Debbie and what Debbie needs. And then tied to that, you have the scenarios, which can be the user journey, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a story. And then how does the developer actually use the story? They're just writing code. Like, why are they, looking? Why do we give them the persona and say, here, use these? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I never understood that either. But then it's like, well, your developers need empathy for the users as well. Um, Peter, explain why.
Explain why? Because I might not think that we need to have the detail needed by detailed Debbie and or anything like that. Like, why would we? Who cares? Filter by city. That's close enough. There's only 100 things to scroll through. What's the big deal with reading those? I produce the results. It's accurate. It covers, you know, the request. It filters down to 100. But maybe detailed Debbie doesn't really want to spend her entire day reading 100 stories about different hotels and places that are maybe not even close to matching the information that she wants. And so having that story and getting sort of it doesn't just tell me to produce partial results. It gives me more information to work with. And like again, to Chad's point, having those users involved at the start, if you're building software for internal company people and having them involved, just it's so powerful. You cannot, I don't think you can underestimate like even if it costs, you know, 10% of their time, it's probably going to be worth it in the end because you're going to have a 15% better product that does their job to their specs. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the points I'm making is that um, in pretty much any design thinking model that you find, there's a million of them, but they are all going to start with like empathy and understanding and getting your foundational understanding of the people and their problems first before you do anything else. And it's kind of like I think of that saying of like, what is it? Measure twice, cut once, right? So like you better
Yep.
measure what you're building and making sure you're going to get value from it. Um, so Jason, I talked to Jason Scherschlicht, our very own head of product at SDG, quite a bit for this because he's all about storytelling and product work, right? So um, he has emphasized to me in the past that a good product should cover the middle of a Venn diagram of the three circles. It should be usable and it needs to be of value to the company and it needs to be technically feasible.
Mm.
So if you don't nail down that sweet spot from the beginning and you just dive into solving problems in a certain way that isn't actually based in reality and isn't based off of a really good understanding of people and where they're at and what their problems are, um, you could do everything right from then on and it could still be a bust at the end because you didn't lay your foundation right. You build your castle in the wrong spot, and who cares if it looks beautiful after that? It's no one's going to use it.
I built this beautiful.
I spent like 3 or 4 weeks building a really complex, complex to me, change management system for a big development project. And it was me and the CIO, and that's all. I never talked to the users. We never had a user story. He just gave me the requirements of what he wanted, and as I was building it, checking in and making sure, yep. And at the end, they never used it because it didn't line up with how they were working.
Not even the CIO? He didn't even use it?
No, I don't think so, because it wasn't for him. It was for the development team.
For the development team to put in stuff? Yeah.
And I was like, this is very early. This is prior to SDG. This is like one of my first consulting projects. And I didn't really know enough to gather the story. Like, I didn't know stories were important. A long time ago, I heard Helmberger talk about how important stories are. And that's kind of when things clicked. Like, you got to get the story. It's all stories. It's all about stories. And if you don't have the whole story, then you have a hole in your story. And then as you're going along layer by layer, if all those holes line up,
I was wondering if that's
you got a serious problem. And that's why you need the Swiss cheese model.
You got there.
Yes.
We really
so how do you
wanted
make
to
sure you
include
have
Swiss
all
cheese in there. There
the
we go.
holes covered? How do you
That's right.
how do you pull the stories out of people to make sure you have like the full story?
I think, and I argue that one of the best ways is direct user observation. So talking to users, amazing. Bringing them into meetings and stuff, fabulous. But even more than that, I have always learned the most from sitting at a user's elbow and watching them work. I might not talk to them the whole time. I might just be watching how they go about their day and taking lots of notes. Because if you get to see them in their environment, in the ways, like the places and the situations where they're going to be using this thing you're building, you're going to notice way more than they would ever think to just tell you in an interview. I think of this one example of if you try to describe to someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you think it's really easy. It should be simple. It should be you scoop out some peanut butter and you put it on a slice of bread, and then you scoop up some jelly and you put it on another bread, and then you smush them together. But in reality, if you gave that to like an alien, right? There's so much more nuance. They could interpret that in so many different ways, and you're not even thinking about some of these steps that you would never tell the alien if they asked you how to make this. It just is second nature to you, and that's how some of these people's jobs are that you're designing for. So in reality, you would have to say, walk over to the fridge, open the left-hand fridge door, find the peanut butter, lift it out without knocking anything over, bring it over to the counter. It has to be like that specific. And there's even a really funny YouTube video, if you ever look it up, of a dad doing this challenge to his kids. He has his kids write down a list of instructions, and he tries to goof it up and interpret it in different ways just to frustrate them.
That's not true. He tries to follow their directions exactly to the letter, and they're not maybe as clear as they could have been.
Same end result, I suppose. It's a good watch.
Allison's preference for watching users actually at their desk working explains why I've spent more than 10% of my life over the last 5 years in Kansas. So thanks for setting them up with that expectation, Allison. That was
You can't put that on me. But I mean, it's true that I learned a lot from me going on those trips. I mean, they've made you do a lot more of that stuff just to be physically present in the building more so than at the elbow learning, which is the challenge. But Like
But I
literally,
think
I'll see people who have printed stuff out and they're like writing stuff in the margins and they're typing stuff in a calculator off to the side of the computer and they're standing up and shouting to someone else over the cubicle. And that's stuff that I would never see, or they would probably even like think to tell me if I was
right,
interviewing them or just had them on a call. Or even if I had like cool site analytics where I was tracking all their clicks and stuff, you don't see the whole picture
right,
unless you're there watching them.
Yeah, and that was a big part of being on what I learned through this project specifically, right, is actually going through your practice of seeing this. Um, it eliminates the tunnel vision that we kind of have,
Hmm.
right, where we're
Hmm.
like, all right, we're going to do this. Here's the process of delivering a web app or whatever we're doing, right? We're
Hmm.
going to do this and then
Hmm.
this and then this. And then you see guys, pull up other systems that I think it's almost second nature for our users to kind of go about their day the way they do. And especially if you're solving like super esoteric problems, right? Like you don't necessarily have all the domain knowledge, the domain expertise, and you don't even have access to all the tools that they're pulling up. So they show you
right.
one little like really refined vision of what they think they want us to build. And this is a point I tried to make maybe clumsily a bit ago. It's why I'm not necessarily worried about AI taking over our jobs. I think it'll make our jobs a lot better. And I was going to ask Allison, like, all of the empathy and all of the thought that goes into what we built over the last 5 years. Maybe the technology side of it might have been delivered a little bit faster with AI. Um, how does AI play into your role for like gathering user stories and
Hmm.
building empathy into them? I think that's a thing that we can do that the tools are out there aren't going to be able to match. I hope.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's certainly a human element to it. I think it can help us with some of the drudgery. Like if I do a bunch of like cool user interviews and then I'm like, can you help me like write up some of the trends? It could do that for me and save me some time copying and pasting and writing, the same old um, suspects. But empathy and human connection and the creativity that comes from it feels feels like it belongs to our souls. I,
Yeah.
I kind of hope so too.
Well, empathy is emotion, and you're connecting with a person in a way that is gives you additional purpose or enhances your purpose.
Hmm.
And for humans, purpose is everything. It's like, why are we doing this? And it's like, well, we're doing it because we need to build this thing that the customer asked for. It's like, that's not, yeah, we get that. We get that in
Right.
10 seconds. Like, we know that's going to happen. We knew ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
But the story is that we have frustrated people.
Hmm.
And why are they frustrated? Well, because they have to use 3 laptops at once, because this one's too slow for what they're doing. And this one doesn't have the software on it that we need because they're different, because one's a Mac, one's a PC. It's like situations like that. There's pain and suffering going on. And if you don't feel that, a little bit of that yourself, it's hard to take on their mission. And,
Hmm.
it also drives you, it motivates you.
For sure. I mean, I think humans, the vast majority of them are good people who hate to see other people suffering. And if you see that happening in front of you, you're going to feel a sense of like motivation and urgency to help them that you wouldn't if you necessarily, like, let's say, got a QA ticket assigned to you, or maybe even like a little feature request form filled out. It's like, I get it. Okay, that's one more thing. But if you are sitting next to someone and they're like, this gosh darn thing is making a bad day even worse, you're like, oh man, I want to help you out, buddy. Humans want to help other humans. That's, again, it's ancient. It's how we're wired. We empathize and connect around stories that we're seeing play out in front of our eyes more so than a QA note.
Yeah,
Uh,
Allison, you're talking about typing on the and hitting the keyboard really hard. Reminds me of the video where the gentleman picks up his keyboard and smashes his monitor off the top of the desk and pushes the whole desk over and just goes screaming out of there. And it's hard to capture that in a user story.
Right,
That
right.
kind of
Yeah, it's
that
so
kind
much
of
more
frustration.
visceral. Right.
But you try, right? You're trying to capture. I mean, you're most people are not rewriting software because the software that they have works perfectly and is doing everything that they need all the time. We really can't, you know, just rewrite the software exactly the same. No, I don't know, Chad, you've never done that project, have you?
Rewrite this? No, not really.
I mean, your project that you're working on now with your client, you've been working on for a number of years, and you are trying to replace a project that survived a lot of years. And, um, but I'm guessing they wanted to make some changes or improvements or help things go a little bit smoother.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I think I'm not speaking out of turn by saying a fair amount of SDG's business are these modernization products or projects, right? Where we take something that has existed. So like in the case of mine, um, original system built in the 90s, right?
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily scale in the age of cloud and everything else. But yeah, you're right, Peter. I mean, along the way, we don't want to just build exactly what they had.
Right.
We're trying to solve problems they didn't know they had along the way. One of the other cool things about working with Allison, I'm going to stop complimenting you after this because it's going to
Don't. Keep going. It's great for my morale.
is she's so humble. She pretends to be so humble, but no, she's like, no, keep complimenting me. But one of the other cool things about working with Allison is these stories that we write when we're building out a product. They don't just serve a purpose in the SDLC, right? Like as we're building it out and as we're like developing features and everything else. They're also wonderful artifacts to have to refer back to when it comes time to go to production and you're supporting a system and you start getting, questions. I know I've gotten a lot of questions on, well, how come we did this way? And I'm able to refer back to a lot of the notes that we took in, 2021, right? Like, oh, this is what we were originally thinking. This is why we made these design decisions. This is why it is the way it is. Um, it helps me refresh my memory. It's a little bit of I don't like saying CYA because that seems so defensive and unproductive, but like it does help you provide like forensics on the history of a build out of a system. And that stuff is great. But I love the artifacts that we build um, just to refer to for support documentation too, right? Like a lot of what Allison wrote, um, we transformed into run books and different types of uh,
Nice.
yeah, just different types of help systems throughout our application. And I mean, the product is better for it. The users that we built it for, I mean, 2/3 of them have retired since we started building it. So the new folks now have, the new folks now have that same history, right? Like I can share with them, like, here's the genesis of this whole thing, right? Going back to a little bit of the 90s before I was here, and then the 5 years ago, 2 years ago, here's the change history, here's all of this stuff. So if you have a
Right.
question, if this retired guy wants to still talk to you, call him up.
Well, and that again is a problem, right? Like, you joke about 2/3 of the people retiring, but who knows how many of them were hanging on because they didn't feel like they could retire or they were being begged not to retire
Yep.
because the information in their heads and their fingers just, if that walks out the door, we are going to be so going back, back in time 10 years to try to figure out why we were doing a thing a certain way.
Yeah, that actually, I mean, that really did happen on my project. There are two names that very specifically postponed retirement until we were able to deliver something. They wanted to see it, actually implemented, stick around
Yeah.
for a month, and then they retired. And I
And
do.
and that's and that's a great user story, right? That's a great story. You've got empathy for those guys who want to hit the golf course or whatever else, maybe some riverboat or something, and get out there. And and they're being prevented from doing that because the software doesn't exist yet to take their place. But also then to, have that they're able to leave after they've passed on their information and gotten things up and going. So that's super cool.
And I'm not kidding when I say I literally talk to one of the guys still every day. I mean, he retired 2, 3 years
I mean,
ago.
guys got to find something to do, right?
We still text back and forth every day. Now it's really just him texting me pictures of a beer on a beach somewhere. kind of being a dick, but like it's kind of fun.
All I know is Kyle's getting a lot of pictures of beers on a beach when Chad retires. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm here. I'm in this major league stadium. Look at the treats and cup. I forget, somebody was showing about the Toronto Blue Jays had a snack cup combination, and I can see somebody sending a picture of that back and saying, here's what I'm doing.
The latest invention in concessions.
That's right.
The Toronto,
I think about the idea of knowledge capture kind of came to life and went crazy when people realized that the boomers were going to retire. And the boomers are called the boomers because there's a lot of them and they work everywhere. And it's like, okay, we're going to lose, I think at the time that I first started thinking about it, like 20% of our workforce in the next 3 years. And it was like, oh my, well, that's a problem. And I feel like, talking this through, I feel like instead of calling it KM or knowledge capture, it should have been story capture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you tell us the stories of all these things before you leave, then we'll have a really good understanding of them. And then maybe in the telling of those stories, we're going to, like, questions will come up and that'll let us do that knowledge capture, which never really happens. I mean, project notes, knowledge capture, like Chad going back to the 90s with information and people that have retired telling him stories of, besides beer, they're probably telling him other things that he really, needs to know. Or maybe it's just beer.
This particular individual is mostly beer.
But I mean, that's true, Kyle. I agree with you. I think, if you think back to our own childhoods and teaching kids now, I mean, that's how you learn about the world, is you get told a lot of stories and books and story time. And you're just imagine if you had to learn all of life's lessons and how to go about the world through like lectures or like step-by-step list documents. Like, people can learn that way, and it's good for some things, I guess, if you have to follow a process. But for the most part, it's a lot more useful, and our brains hold on to it a lot better if you can tell it in the terms of a story. Like, I used to do my job this way to accomplish this task because of this, this, and this in a chronological flow, as opposed to, here are 10 steps that you must follow, no context, like, just do it, keep your head down. Like, yeah, but like, why? For what? Like, again, the stories make meaning and they help you empathize for where people are. And I think it allows us to be more creative, right? I think Chad maybe alluded to this. If you have the whole picture, they might be asking for one thing, but with our expertise and with all this extra information, our fresh eyes, we could say, oh, well, in that case, what if we did it this other way? That would be even maybe better for you. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have even thought to ask that. Or like, I didn't know that would be possible. So anyway, I agree with you, Kyle. I think if you're trying to teach anyone anything, including about your job or this knowledge transfer, stories, it's how our brains are wired to learn anyway.
I think in the process of storytelling as well, the person telling the story may actually be learning things from the story they're telling.
Mm-hmm.
I met with a company to do a project to automate this process. And one of the steps in the process was that managers would get an email, managers that were not part of their team, that didn't report to them. These were just people across the organization. And one of the issues was, responsiveness. Like it was crickets to send the emails out and wait for the response, and it wasn't happening. And so, they were telling me the story of this, and it's like, can you make them? But through the process, it was like, okay, we're going to assign them a task. And I said, okay. And then they're going to have to get the task and then fill out the thing for the task and send it back. Right. And they're like, yeah. I said, so they're getting the information and having to respond. I said, that's kind of the same thing that's happening now with the emails. It sounds like you have a people problem, and it's how to get them to respond. And, do you want to solve that before we maybe build the system? And so I talked myself out of 2 weeks of work. But
at the same time, you could have built another system that nobody used because it didn't solve the problem, right? The problem wasn't that they didn't know what to do. The problem is that they didn't do what they needed to do to advance the process. And having a task or a checklist or anything like that, it wasn't that they didn't understand what they were supposed to do. It was just that they didn't do it.
Right. So then you have to figure that out. It's looking back, I have like stories of meeting with teams of people and mapping out processes. And that process is kind of a story as they walk you through it. This is happening and they do this and they do this. And I did that with a company to build a intranet for their customers, or extranet. And it was 3 different teams that were part of the process, and none of them knew the other person's part of the process very well. So getting all of them together, and they had a huge whiteboard, and we mapped all of it out. And they noticed there was a big chunk that didn't need to happen, that was costing about 25 hours in the process. And, it took them to hear each other's stories and kind of come together and learn from that. And that's, it's like, wow, there's stories everywhere and in everything. And it's like the quality of the information in the telling of the story. It's like, is this the time to embellish? Is this a good time to lie about how we're doing this? And it's like, if you don't have the true story and the whole story, then you're going to have problems. Could you tell my dad about telling stories instead of lecturing? Like, can you go back in time?
If only.
Well, speaking of which, Allison, have you ever had the case where people are in the same room and have a disagreement about the process or anything like that?
Like our own team members, or like users?
No, like just the users disagreeing about how or why something's done a certain way, and having that information finally come to a head.
All the time. Yeah. I think that's ideally one of the things that talking to real people, and those people talking to themselves, and having these stories that cover everything and not just people's individual silos or a certain screen or point in time, is you can suss out the truth and you can all agree on it. And by laying it all out like that, I mean, again, it's how people best communicate and empathize with one another.
Right.
And I think like maybe this is a little bit of a tangent, but like one of the really powerful things about a journey map is you're not just looking at it for a specific feature or a specific screen, or maybe even just a particular like web portal, for example. You are taking a persona, a specific person, and you are mapping their whole journey across maybe hours or days or weeks as they try to overcome their problem, whatever it may be that you're trying to help them with. You are seeing the entire picture and noticing the 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 points where they're really struggling, maybe emotionally, or the high points of the experience, or maybe there's like a gap when they go from this stage to the next stage, where each stage does its own job well, but the connection point between them is weird. And I think in terms of those silos, maybe that's, Kyle, what you were kind of talking about. It's breaking out of silos. It's looking at things more holistically and saying, if our company, product, brand, whatever you want to call it, is affecting this person at lots of different touch points, how are they going to feel about us at the end of the day? How will we have made their life better or worse? So I do feel like that is a tangent. I mean, yes, users can obviously like disagree with each other all the time, and that there's an art to compiling all of those opinions and trying to navigate through it in the way that will solve everyone's problem as best you can.
And sometimes being a third party that's not heavily invested in the company, right,
Yes.
can give you a, like, as an outsider looking at what you two are talking about, what I see is you need to do this and this and this instead, or, maybe helping them like, hey, we can add some technology or something in here that'll help smooth that part of your challenges with getting that information across the silos, right? Or something like that.
For sure.
Can come to it. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like just taking the proactive step of prototyping it out or designing some mock-ups and saying like, hey, I know we were kind of like stuck on this. This one seemed promising to me. Can I just like show it to you and we can step through and we see how that feels? Sometimes that can be, I think, received a little bit more generously than, I think you're wrong. I'm going to ignore you and we're going to proceed with this thing from now on. It's more like, here's a vision. How does it feel now that you've looked at it and now that you've considered it? And maybe this is something I do often actually. If there are multiple opinions, 'cause I'm a designer, right? Multiple opinions about how a screen should be laid out.
Yeah.
I can probably, by the first meeting, know which one I'm leaning towards and which one I actually want to go with. But if it's simple enough, I'll just mock up each version, and in the next meeting, I'll walk them through each one and I'll say, here are the pros and cons of this one that I'm seeing. Here are the pros and cons of this one I'm seeing. And that's almost going back to like, it's another empathy thing in another way. It's empathizing with these people who are trying to be heard and have a strong opinion and trying to get us to do the right thing. And it's a way of saying, I hear you. I'm going to give you a fair shot. I want to show you that I understand and am taking you seriously. And here's what I think about it now that I've given it a fair shot, and you can see that I've given it a fair shot. Here's what my ultimate recommendation is now that you all feel a little bit.
That's a really good point. Heard, because like you seeing somebody do their job at their desk, them seeing the actual interface and the screens in front of them can actually change people's minds and let them see problems that they weren't expecting with what they were describing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Nice. I think that's the power of just whipping it out really quickly with design as opposed to maybe like the more waterfall approach of like, we are going to decide now, this is the way it is going to be, and now we are going to develop it, and we're going to spend 1 million hours on it, and we're going to leave other people behind in the dust, and hopefully we got it right.
Yeah, I've heard someone say, well, we'll just do it this way. And it's like, well, they might not use it that way. Well, they will, because I'll tell them. Like, they'll do it, we're going to build it. They're going to use it, period. End of story. And it's like, that wasn't a really good story.
That's no one gets to be the hero in that story. There's no hero's journey there.
That's where you develop this.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as I'm talking about, this is another classic product mindset thing, is do small experiments, try it out in cheap ways, see what the results are, test your hypotheses, and then go forward with the one that performed the best instead of picking one and doubling down and forcing it all the way through to completion. And one of the things that I'm thinking about, Chad, you brought up AI. It's fast to make a design, and it's getting faster and faster, and it's even getting faster and faster to just build it with development. It might be kind of shallow development, or it could be real, but you can just say, let's do it both. Let's try it both ways and judge the results. And that way, that's not about arguing what you think is best. The data is going to show us. A/B testing, ABC testing, whatever you want to call it.
I like argumenting.
Argument.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm planning to have a series of arguments.
That's right.
I'm argumenting. I think about that. I think about the, like the transfer of stories, the conduit. Like, this person needs to hear the story of this because they're like pushing us forward in a direction that we shouldn't be going in. And it also makes me think of the term fail fast. And it's like, well, we're not talking about like have complete failure quickly if you're going to have it, but we're going to test early. We're going to do rapid prototyping. And each one of those things might be a failure, but it's early in the project and you're not failing way down the road when you've built all this stuff behind it, all this functionality that, isn't going to really work for the users. How do you get that story for the one person that uses it a little bit differently and needs that button that no one else needs, and they've told you in their story that why is this button here? We never use it. How do you suss those out?
There's no one size fits all. It's rough. I mean, if that one person is like your super user and you have to appease them, they are, a key part of your team, and the success of your project hinges upon them. That's very different than if you are building a web app with hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be using it. And it also depends on, can you accommodate that one person's use case without degrading the experience for everyone else? Because if they need a completely different configuration, that will just make things a little bit less intuitive, even a little bit less for the many, 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 many other people who are going to be using this. Is that the right call? And there's no one size fits all answer for that. You have to judge for yourself.
Maybe that's what AI will get us is we're going to have 2 copies of the application, one for Debbie and one for Sally over here, who doesn't use it but once a month to do this one thing, and we'll just create 2 because it's so fast.
I mean, literally, I did see some people are predicting that as a trend in 2026 of like hyper personalization, because these AIs can keep track of your kind of behaviors and your goals and what you tend to use, and it can move things around for you and make things better for you as a individual, which is pretty cool. It's like you get to be the director of your own story, the hero in your own story, and this tool is adapting to best aid you in that. But I can't say I know all the nitty-gritty around that. Chad, have you heard anything about AI being used in that kind of format?
A little bit. I mean, yeah, I try to like tie that into like what we've built and the other things that I've built, and I'm trying to decide if that is a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because even within a business, even within like one business unit, if you have, 6 different users, each with this hyper customized version of this thing that you built, is that going to be better for the business or worse? I mean, I guess it depends on the case a little bit, but
that's true.
It kind of worries me a little bit, right? That everybody is going to be able to do things their way, and you'll have, a whole bunch of different business processes that come out of this. Just be able to get AI to build his thing the way that he likes it, and it's
and not document it and not
right.
Yeah, right.
And
that
then
person leaves, and
then you got to support it too, right? And so like if I was supporting And I'm still, I hope my brain hasn't calcified yet, but like, I'm just thinking of supportability around all these hyper customized systems, just down to the database level, right? Like, oh, okay,
Right.
well, this guy's got this weird process that requires four more tables and four more like data extracts and four more reports and four more other things that we just, it's like, it's just a snowball effect where it just gets bigger and crappier eventually if
Mm.
everybody gets to have a say. Like I say this all the time. Like I don't know. It just seems like um, committees are where good ideas go to die, right? But
Sure.
also these hyper individualized solutions. There's a medium there somewhere that we got to find.
Mm.
There's a
And
reason we don't all make up our own rules as we're driving down the highway,
Yeah.
trying to figure out,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I
Governance.
drive left, maybe right, maybe north, maybe south.
I mean
I think
that's a
there's
good analogy, right? Because
oh
the highway is the common infrastructure, right, that we're
Right.
building out. But you can drive. I mean, I have three different things that I like to drive, right? I've got a pickup truck, I've got a
Yep.
car, I've got a motorcycle. We all take the same roads. Um, so maybe that's the tilt to how you get like the hyper customization, but also common pathways. Like the roads all go the same place.
Right.
The ride I take to that place is wildly different.
I felt a lot
Mm.
better about Harleys when someone said, because I was complaining how loud they were, and he said, "Well, it's loud because if you don't see me on the road, that's a
Mm.
problem, but you're sure as hell gonna hear me." And it
True.
was like, oh, well, now when I hear a really loud Harley, I think safety, nice work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that,
Yeah.
we'll do parting thoughts. We got 7 minutes because I think we're gonna have a lot of parting thoughts. This could have a part two.
Easily. We could
I'm
we
gonna
could bring
start
Swiss cheese into it.
because I have, yeah, exactly. And then it's gone. My parting thought. Thanks, Swiss cheese, man. The train has left the station. No, I think
I'll go first. I think all of these stories and getting things more accomplished with better stories and better capture are all going to work together and make better software overall. Um, I mean, I remember developing software 30 years ago and videotaping a user using it and just cringing the whole time that they weren't doing the things the way that I thought they should.
Mm.
Um, and now that capturing that earlier in the process is going to make a huge difference, and probably already does, right? Right, Kyle, did you get it back?
yeah, I did.
All right.
I think the personalization, the customization, everybody getting it their own way. I built dynamic intranet home pages and stuff where you see your department's stuff, your team's tasks, your birthdays for your people, and it's just doing filtering and things like that. It's like, okay, that makes sense to me. It's like everybody gets a personalized experience, and a UI that does not make sense. Because if I have to train people, if I have to support somebody and I go, okay, you want to find this thing and click on it, and they're like, that doesn't exist. It's like, oh, which version are you using? Version 6? Well, let me get the big manual here and see what version 6 looks like because I can't remember all of them. So, but I think it's coming. I think um, something like partial, like some kind of hybrid solution might be an option, but stories are everything. And if you look at things like a story, like you're selling a product, you're going and sell them on it. It's like we'll go in and tell them the story of why. And if it's a good story, they might buy it from you. I mean, it's just everything I think of. I think of, oh, there's stories, communication. Like your story is incomplete. That's why the communication broke down and this didn't happen. And since there's only 4 minutes left, I think I'll stop telling my story of the final parting thoughts. Chad, anything?
No, I'd rather hear Allison talk than blab for another 2 minutes. I'd like to just end on Allison.
That's a good
Oh,
parting thought.
you were
Allison?
being so kind to me today. So, is it because it's your birthday You're just in a really good mood.
Yeah, happy birthday.
I'm in a good mood. But no, I don't have anything else to say, right? So instead of just blah, I'd rather hear you.
Well, I think, first of all, I'm happy that I got to dupe you all into helping me do a dry run for my presentation. So thanks for that. But also, I think talking with people about this, it just helps me even understand how many different types of stories there are. Like we talked about the story of seeing a user in a use case. There is the story of a user learning the story of the product being developed, and it's useful for them to see how that sausage is being made, and they get to weigh in and share that with their colleagues. There is the story of maybe even the team. We have this common purpose. We are a band of adventurers, and we have obstacles to to work through, and we have a glorious reward, and we're going to help the world in a certain way. And if you can align your team and your product in that way, that's a lot more motivating too than just we're building an app to make money. And it's again, I think it permeates everything. It's just so intrinsic to humans, and how we empathize with one another. And if we don't get that right, that empathizing, that understanding, we've said it a million times, everything else might be bust. So if empathizing and understanding is so important, you might as well utilize storytelling, which is like our main vehicle to achieve that. That's my parting thought for you.
And with that, I think we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, buddy.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.